Welcome to the MMA Depressed Us. I feel like I was ready for a bigger intro than that. I was gonna had some big gesture, swooping gesture ready, but then I got there and I was just like, you know what? Fuck, I'm just gonna put my arms down, and I'm already feeling a little sad because we've been talking about politics to start our show. So,
well, I did that deliberately, by the way. That was a plan to bring these topics up because the tone of this show cannot be jovial or happy in any way. You got to go into it ready to be disappointed.
I am joined, as always, this is Zane Simon of Bloody Elbow, and I'm joined, as always, by Connor Rebish and Phil McKenzie. Phil.
Hello.
Connor has been testing out his god-awful accents.
Wait, it's good. I can do one word. Hello. Come on, that's all right.
Oh, God.
It's better than like a Monty Python American accent, at least.
Connor, shh.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone who wants to try and name what that accent that Connor gave, if you're in the comments of the article or on Twitter or whatever,
or
try and name what
offended because you realize how badly you've been mocked.
Yeah, because he hasn't said who it was, so just try and guess what country that was.
Yeah. That'll be something fun for you to do while we put you through this terrible show. We are here, of course, as always, to watch terrible MMA. We are watching, we've selected a good bad fight, something sloppy and terrible and fun. A bad fight, something that is just terrible. And a big disappointment, something that everybody thought would be better and just was not good at all. This week, our good bad fight is Danny Mitchell versus Igor Araujo, about that Connor remembers nothing of, which is good because I'm excited to highlight to see it highlighted before his very eyes.
Always a good sign, Zane. When I literally don't, I'm not even 100% sure this fight really happened.
Your eyes, I'm waiting for those eyes to light up like a kid at Christmas. That's why we do the shows. Those moments where it's like you unwrapping the gift, which is in fact a turd, and yet you're still excited and full of joy.
You just got a harrowing look into Zane's childhood. I've never unwrapped a turd, Zane, if I'm being honest.
That's why we start with the good bad fight first.
Yeah,
just to start the slide.
And we'll be following that up with our bad fight, Jared Rosholt versus Stefan Struve, which Connor was passionate about us watching because he remembers it being as terrible as anything can be.
Yeah, a lot of the bad fights that I suggest, they're kind of my disappointment fight because a lot of them are ones where I really expected something more. And I expected that Stefan Struve would, throw punches at Jared Rosholt for one, and he doesn't. So that's going to be a good time.
And then our big disappointment, Anderson Silva versus Thales Leites, which is obviously a legendary MMA disappointment, one of the all-time letdown fights in history, which, you can't get a bigger letdown than an all-time letdown. So I am certainly personally excited to revisit that.
And interesting evidence to the notion that Anderson Silva started to decline way before we thought he did. So we can talk about that as we watch it.
A conspiracy theory.
Yes. They're turning the frogs gay, and Anderson Silva's been old for a decade.
Oh, all right. We are off to a rollicking start. So yeah, as always, our format is that I will count you down. We are doing this all on Fight Pass, with Fight Pass versions of the videos. We are just starting at the beginning of each video to keep it easy and simple, no tricks, no problems syncing up. I will count everyone down to start, and then we will get to our first fight.
And in case you are not using Fight Pass, you have a DVD or some other mysterious means of watching the fights, I will use my powerful interruption abilities to try to note when the first round begins as well.
All right. So hopefully that all works out for everyone. I will probably have at least one false or terrible start per episode. But until then, are we all ready to go? Everybody good?
Yep.
All right, let's dive into Danny Mitchell versus Igor Araujo in 3, 2, 1, go.
There's always this minuscule delay before Zane says go, where the rhythm breaks just slightly.
I tried to remove it. I hovered the cursor over the play button this time around just for your complaining ass, and you still complain.
It's always just like a few ticks. What's that?
Make one of your rhythm videos about it.
I should.
About it,
Yes,
Connor.
exactly.
You can like time it to music. You can be like, you can be talking about Willie Pep or whoever it could be, and then like, and here we have Zane. Zane, let's put him against to the music.
Note how the go falls just a split second after the fourth beat of the imaginary measure.
I assume if you're going to put any video to music, it's probably going to end up being the dancing gif. So I'd rather just avoid that whole thing. Oh, man. Danny Mitchell. I miss the UFC signing Danny Mitchell because just for the nickname alone.
What is the nickname?
Is he the Cheesecake Assassin, or am I thinking someone else?
Cheesecake Assassin, yes.
That's a good one. That's a nice nickname.
I've forgotten how amazing his mullet was as well. I mean,
yeah, he's right in that whole Mike Pyle and what was the other guy from the recent Tough who had like a weight cut seizure and was in the UFC briefly. Creepy Weasel, Steve.
Yeah.
What is the Creepy Weasel's name? Steve Montgomery.
Steve Montgomery. He's right in the middle of that whole continuum. It's like Danny Mitchell, Steve Montgomery, Mike Pyle.
It's definitely business in the front and party in the back, but the business appears to be like a gas station attendant. Not so much businessman in the front, necessarily.
The party is also noticeably less luxurious than, like, say, Mike Piles as well. I have to say, there's certainly a touch scraggly there.
It's less of a waterfall and more of a drainage.
Yeah. Gas station attendant in the front, mobile meth lab in the back. I gotta say, that's kind of what I'm feeling from this haircut.
Oh, poor Danny Mitchell.
I like Danny Mitchell. He's actually in some pretty fun fights.
He has been, yeah. No question. He's one of those guys who, like, he didn't have the wrestling, he didn't really have the striking, but he had an aggressive clinch game and then a really aggressive grappling game that just made him kind of fun to watch. Like, he always pressed the fight, so that's also why this comes up as like a good bad fight, because it's a fight that's constantly, people are constantly engaging. It's just a complete trash fire.
Nice. One of our classic two slabs of meat being slapped against.
He's one of those guys that I think came to the UFC just a bit late. Like,
yeah,
he would have had some fun. Like, he would have won some more fun fights if he'd been, just like 4 or 5 years back.
Igor Araujo too. I was really surprised when he ended up getting signed. He got signed like, I want to say it was like 30 fights in like 10 years into his career.
He's like 37 or something right now, isn't he? He was already pretty old when he began his UFC career.
He's 36 now. He's got signed by the UFC in 2013 with a record of 23-6-1, and at 33. So
yeah, is he Batman? Or am I thinking?
No, that was I can't. Ivan George.
Oh yeah, that's the one. Sorry.
Oh man. Yeah, it is weird that this, I think, has been kind of forgotten in the bad MMA lexicon, because it is such an iconically bad.
I'm excited.
At least an iconically bad moment.
Yeah, I mean, I remembered it the minute Zane suggested it. I was like, yeah, that one, just for that one moment. The thing is, I can't remember what the rest of the fight is like aside from that. I'm assuming it's going to be pretty fun, but like that moment has eclipsed all else.
Oh well, don't spoil it for me. It's going to be like the first time I heard of like Manos, the Hands of Fate. I'm hoping for good things here.
Oh man, does that mean like we have to do the rest of the show in the what's his name voice? Who was that character from Manos Hands of Fate?
Torgo?
Torgo voice.
I can do Torgo's I can do Torgo caressing your hair. You want? Here you go, Zane.
I bet you can't.
That's the best I can do. Where I just like for about 20 good seconds, I reach out and then kind of touch your hair. And then you say, don't ever try that again. And no one's really sure what I actually tried.
Here's a question then with Torgo related. My personal theory on Torgo is that he was supposed to be like a sort of Pan-esque goat.
He's supposed to be a satyr. And the story I heard is that he put the rig made for his legs on backwards. And then that's why he could not walk at all. He couldn't bend his knees or anything, and it didn't look like Fawn's legs, but no one ever fixed it over the course of the entire shoot. Yeah, so I also love how the guy in that movie just makes him carry all his luggage constantly when he's clearly like crippled. He can't walk.
That's a good one, man. Sad I've never seen this film.
It's a Mystery Science Theater classic.
Yeah, it's one of the popular picks for worst movie of all time, which usually means it's actually one of the best bad movies of all time.
Yeah,
it's not really. Yeah. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah, it's like Ed Wood movies, you know.
Yeah,
they're not actually that bad because there's obviously a lot of passion and interest.
Round one now. Round one just began. Sorry, no warning. We got too caught up talking about. Boy, just some brilliant filmmaking.
Oh, and we get our first terrible wheel kick.
Classic Araujo.
Right before wheel kicks were a thing in MMA. So Araujo pulling that out is pretty impressive.
Boy, that was some bad takedown defense. Oh, there we go. Scramble from Mitchell.
Oh,
I don't remember.
I'm trying to remember what this fight is going to look like because it's also like it's two reasonably good grapplers who basically just cancel each other out in every area because neither of them is a physically or technically dominant force.
I have no memory of who wins this. Like,
I have no memory of it whatsoever. So.
Anyway, we're getting some active guard off the bottom, active guard play from Araujo as Danny Mitchell tries to like smash past his way and immediately gets reversed.
Yeah, I won't say that was an amazing sweep so much as it was Danny Mitchell not really keeping his balance.
Yeah.
Both men looking for triangles off of their backs.
Yeah, it kind of looks like flyweight grappling, although it's not. It's just people not being very good at like maintaining top position.
At control grappling, yeah.
Like concert grappling, like two people who get into a fight at a festival. Where like nobody knows how to maintain top position. Araujo looking to pass. Mitchell looking to reshoot.
And going for the leg, trying to wrap up a leg for a leg lock, it looks like, too. Which Araujo just cuts into mount. Or near mount.
Yeah, quarter mount.
Oh, man.
Wow, so that was some good camera work.
A variety. Yes. Oh, a lot of this fight may slow.
Sorry, Zane, go on. Go on, what you were saying.
I was going to say, a lot of this fight may be slow grind, because I have to admit, I remember very little of this as well. Which...
Hey, that's how Manos is, too. Manos is like 30% establishing shots. So it's okay as long as the moments that really matter really hit home.
These are the establishing shots of this fight, which is a heel hook from Danny Mitchell. You know, a reasonable heel hook, too.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a bad heel hook he's got going there.
This is good. It's like blue belt grappling. We got some fun exchanges here.
Yeah. Toe hold, heel hook, Mitchell working a series.
I feel like leg locks are a good idea for this fight.
Araujo kind of slapping at him.
trying to straighten out his leg so he can't get heel hooked.
Both guys starting to realize that this is just not a functional position, but they don't really want to abandon
Mitchell, he does actually have some control of that far leg, too. Like, he's
Yeah.
not in a terrible position here, although he'd probably be better served to just take top, to just go for a top position.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that they're both pretty flexible. Neither one of them is particularly physically strong, so it just ends up with like a ton of them getting put into these positions and then just sort of rubbering their way out of it and then doing the same, having the same thing done to them.
And lots of slapping ground and pound.
Yeah.
I
mean, there's a good argument.
Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, before like Araujo started landing those elbows, there was a good argument we hadn't really seen a significant strike until that point.
Araujo's striking looks exactly like the high fives he was handing out as he walked to the cage. It's like slightly too hard to be a high five, but really not enough to hurt someone.
Oh,
this is all right. This has been a pretty good first round.
It's scrambly and it's fun and mostly grappling.
Ooh, nice elbows from Mitchell. Some of those and foot stomps, man, are the ones that just make your toes curl up when you see them. Like, it's very uncomfortable to imagine being elbowed in the crown of the head.
Yeah.
Even though I'm sure there are much worse places to be hit. It's just
yeah.
The fact that it doesn't give at all when it gets hit just makes it seem much worse.
And usually the person doing it, you're in a pretty like stationary position to land that usually. So it's not like a glancing blow. It's just a complete.
Hey, that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll sweep you there and both guys end around on their feet.
So not a bad, fun, scrambly grappling fight from two scrambly grapplers so far.
Yeah. I guess you'd give it to Igor, although I don't really. I mean, he landed some strikes, but not much headway made on either side.
Probably Igor for getting the sweeps and landing a few more strikes.
Yeah. If Mitchell had been, that's true.
The only real Mitchell's best offense was the heel hook, and I don't think it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite,
actually.
Yeah.
If it had been a little deeper, it might have actually edged him some, but Araujo's leg was mostly straightened out, and he didn't really seem to be in any danger.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a pretty well matched fight between two guys who I don't think would often be very well matched up in the modern UFC.
Yeah,
it would be like a perfectly reasonable main event at a small, not advertised like Foxwoods Casino type card.
In the current UFC, it'd be like one of these guys would get Mike Perry, and the other one would get like, like Tyron Woodley or something, without in a non-title fight, just or Albert Tumanov or something. It'd just be like, yep, we're just gonna watch these dudes die. That's the fight.
Mitchell's striking reminds me. Me and Phil just keep talking at the same time. I'm sorry, Phil.
No, you go for it.
Well, I was going to say Mitchell's striking reminds me very much of the striking of TJ Waldberger. Where
Waldberger he's one of those fighters. He had the serious case of what I now think of as Patrick Cummins syndrome, which is his striking didn't look awful, but nobody got hit as hard as TJ Waldberger.
Yeah, and he was clearly like that. It was very much a rote approach to striking. Like, as soon as the attack was launched, you could tell that somebody who was watching for openings could definitely find those openings. Like what Waldberger and Mitchell do when they begin striking is not going to change until the combination is finished. So you can, like somebody like Giorgio Petrosian would have a goddamn field day picking apart someone like whose kicking game looks like that.
But yeah, like TJ Waldberg was interesting because he clearly had like power and he could attack at multiple levels, but there's like often these times when you look at fighters and you'll just be like, why don't you just get in the pocket? Someone will be hanging on the outside trying to look for counters, and you're just like, why don't you just get in the pocket? Just do it. You're not going to win like this. like TJ Waldberger is a really good example of why that's a bad idea. Like sometimes he would just get in there and he would just get thumped.
Yeah, it was always like he'd be doing pretty well, and you're like, yeah, he looks pretty good, and then he'd just be out like a light.
Arguably took 2 rounds off of Mike Pyle, and then just got brutally knocked out.
So in the meantime, we were watching Igor Araujo pretty thoroughly just sort of cut through Danny Mitchell's ground game.
Yeah, and he couldn't handle Mitchell's deadly kickboxing.
He took one teep to the chest type area, and he was like, nope, going for the takedown.
Oh.
Mitchell trying to play some high guard, some rubber guard. It doesn't look like he's quite flexible enough for it. We did talk about how both guys are reasonably flexible, but it doesn't quite look like he can really get his leg over Araujo's shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, both guys are they're decent grapplers, but they're not dominating ones. They're both guys that are going to put together a scrambly fight on the ground rather than being, it's not even like a Ronnie Yaya ground game.
No, not even close. It's what I always call blue belt grappling. Like they know what to do. They are aggressive and they scramble and they attack, but neither of them. Araujo a little more so than Mitchell, but neither of them, they're missing the little details and the discipline that comes when you start to advance to higher levels of grappling.
Which is, of course, weird because, obviously for Araujo, he is actually a black belt.
Yeah. Strikes change everything, I guess. Nice job by Mitchell to get back up.
And not everybody's jiu-jitsu translates all that well to MMA. There are just some people's BJJ games, like they can have a really tight jiu-jitsu game on the mat, and then in a fight, it's with like everything has to be faster and sped up because you only have 5 minutes.
Damian Maia's jiu-jitsu didn't really, I mean, he's one of the best grapplers ever, and his jiu-jitsu didn't really translate perfectly to MMA until quite recently. I mean, he's had to really make a lot of adjustments and add to other aspects of his game to get to the point where he can dominate everyone he faces with his top game. I mean, I remember his fight with Ryan Jensen. He just kept pulling guard on Ryan Jensen, and modern Damian Maia would have torn
Speaking of pulling guard,
there it is.
Danny Mitchell pulling for the arm bar that he was nowhere close to getting.
Yeah, the thing is, I was going to say about Danny Mitchell is that he is a guy who is completely who goes for the maximum reward from every area of grappling. Like no matter how low the chance is, he's just like leg lock, pull guard, arm bar. Like everything is very unlikely to work, but if it works, the fight, kind of the fight's over type thing.
Yeah, it's something we see more in women's MMA these days. It's the Jessica I syndrome, where it's like no matter what, you just not even thinking of limiting your offensive options. You're just attacking every single opening that you think of or see.
Which while you were going through that, at the end of the round, Mitchell went for some weird like shoulder lock thing that
he never got. He went for like a reverse straight arm bar, but he never had Araujo's arm straightened out.
I don't think he even had his arm. He just kind of locked his hands around his shoulder and like tried to pull it.
He didn't have the right angle to. I mean, that's a hard thing to make work anyway.
Yeah, it's a bit like Paul Sass. Someone from a place without the best grappling, who's essentially managed to really just cycle. What's that?
You're dissing the Sass angle.
I am, I'm afraid, but he's just someone who's just tried to cycle through finishing techniques. And then it's like, is it working? No. Is it working? No. Is it working? And eventually the fight is over.
Ian Entwistle, same thing.
Yeah.
Paul Redmond, I think.
So we're in the third round, which is the masterpiece round of this fight.
They're all, I hate to say, Phil, but they all seem to be British, all of these fighters.
I was going to say. You guys kept coming up with them.
Yeah, Redmond, Entwistle, Sass. For some reason, they're all British.
Oh, Mitchell shooting in for a single leg that was pretty deep for him not to get it, honestly. Like, he was in past the hip on that single leg and then was just like, I don't really want it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like aggressive British grappler and like non-Russian or Dagestan, or like, European takedown fighter are two of the things you should always be worried about. Like when they come to the UFC, just don't predict these people to win. This guy looked great.
Australian top control fighter. Like, how good is his wrestling really?
Araujo with the guard pull that time for a triangle.
Yeah, close on it actually. He's pretty close.
Yeah, he's looking like he might have that if not for the cage.
He's very close on it, but he doesn't have the arm across. But part of that too. I wonder if part of that with the British grappler thing is that Britain also produces a lot of the like overly meaty guy who only throws hooks. And who is like really, really prone to being out grappled.
Don't you call Jack Marshman British? He's Welsh, damn you.
He is British technically, but
I know.
But yeah,
Jack Marshman, but like, even with even less going on to his game.
I loved the way that like, that you can get these little waves of people from a region who have like one thing to their game. Like, there was that wave of, in the overhand right era of the welterweight division, there was like the era of where Paul Daly and Dan Hardy were coming up with a left hook that was like magic, like a left hook. It's not a jab and it's not an overhand. And, to the rest of the division, it was like, what is this strange new attack you British people are coming with?
Is it like a leg kick? No, not quite. I gotta say, Mitchell did really well to defend that triangle. I mean, that was locked in, and was at the point where the adjustments needed to be made. He kept his arm from being pulled across. He smashed Araujo into the fence to prevent the angle. Ooh, we get a reverse mount.
We got reverse mount, and this is where things get silly. This is where we don't know what Mitchell's doing. He's got reverse mount and he's hugging a leg, and there's no real.
I think he was looking for a knee. He was looking for a knee bar, but then just realized
there's no knee bar that's going to happen. And
he's got some headway on an inverted heel hook. Oh, that's not bad. Nope, Araujo's fine.
Araujo giving the double thumbs up.
He's got it situated in the wrong part of his elbow.
And what do you do when you're 50-50 and nobody's got anything going really? You slap each other. That's what you do. You spend a minute slapping each other.
I would have loved for some 50-50 boxing. Oh, are we going to get it?
Wait a minute.
Is this the fight that ends in like 30 seconds of 50-50 guard boxing?
Yeah.
Yes, a brawl in 50-50 guard.
It's slowly been building this way to the whole fight. It's like this really slow build to one of the best, worst moments in MMA.
Yes.
With Danny Mitchell unwilling to let go of heel hooks that are not going to happen.
And Araujo unable to punish him effectively for it.
Yeah. Do it for England, Danny. Hold on to submissions long after they're not going to work.
Here we go. It's happening. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, it is. Oh, I don't.
Araujo's left arm is so tired. He doesn't have the energy.
Flailing away at him with this wet noodle.
Oh my God. This is amazing. That was a great end to a fight. That made everything. I mean, it wasn't a bad fight up to them, but that made it more than worth it.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's the magic of that fight. Why it had to be there. It's just a slow build all to this one magic minute where they're just
Danny Mitchell's famed wet pasta attack.
It was the things that like after the fight, it was like when the GIF was getting shared around, and it was people looking at it being like, "Is this looping?"
Yeah.
No,
it goes on for that long. 40 seconds. Oh, it was good. That was amazing. That is like the non-scary version of Fry Takayama, where it's like
I love they picked that as the move of the night. They know what they're doing.
yeah, of course. Why? What else from this fight are you gonna remember beyond that? Oh, that's good shit. They're showing multiple angles of this amazing exchange. Oh my god. Every time that like a limp left hand hits Mitchell in the face, he just kind of like blinks but doesn't stop throwing.
Oh,
Classic.
Can we start a petition to have that put into like the permanent UFC intro, with the Hans Zimmer music in the background and like all the most famous moments of UFC history? Like,
I really just want them to show that whole exchange over Face the Pain, and that's the entire UFC intro. I want that to be the brand they present to first-time viewers.
What they could do it while like maybe they cut it out so it's just them floating in space like around a globe, like screensaver style.
Some shitty vaporwave video. In like a CGI space background with just Danny Mitchell and Igor Araujo just eternally boxing each other from the 50-50 guard. Oh my god, that was good.
All right. Let's jump in. We can keep talking, but we're gonna jump in on Jared Rosholt versus Stefan Struve now. You don't want to let that high die down too much. And starting this video in 3, 2, 1, go.
That was good. That was like right on time.
Oh, thank you. I was pretty proud of that.
Are you going to be on my time, Zane? I assume you guys have seen Whiplash.
I don't know. I don't think I have.
It's pretty good. It's obviously it came out in the 21st century.
Hey. Just because I watch mostly old movies doesn't mean I watch only old movies.
There's a great scene when like the drama main character is being rated by what's his name? Awesome guy, J. Jonah Jameson.
Did I just hear the name Jenna Jameson when I sat down?
J. Jonah Jameson. Who's the guy in Whiplash?
That's right.
I was literally just thinking, oh my god, that's a coincidence. I was just thinking, I got up and went into the kitchen. I said, I realize I need to make a video compilation of Zane beginning the fights on this series, intercut with H.K. Simmons yelling at Zane about dragging and rushing.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. That's so funny.
Are you going to be on my time?
That's right. I don't remember. I remember now what Whiplash is. I didn't see it because I realized it's supposed to be really good, but a movie about people playing the drums just did not have any pull to me.
Have you not seen it?
No.
Oh, it is really good.
I'm sure it is.
It makes jazz drumming a remarkably like athletic experience.
No, I've known drummers that drumming is a very athletic experience. It's really cool. I just don't really care about it as a plot device.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really into jazz, you probably won't. I know jazz people complain because they're like, Buddy Rich, that's who he chose as like the idol of jazz drumming. Buddy Rich is basic. Jazz people were not pleased with that, but if you don't care too much about the particulars, it's a very, very good movie. It does not deserve to be discussed on the MMA Depressed Us, put it that way.
Well, I will watch it.
Surely jazz guys would have picked someone else by like default, as like it's one of those Heisenberg things. The minute a popular film selected that guy, he was no longer acceptable for jazz snobs.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, jazz is one of those things that I have. I despite spending my high school years playing it, man, my interest in it is really skin deep. Like you start getting into the experimental stuff, and it's just like, I don't know why you would want to listen to this.
Yeah, it's not accessible. I agree with that. Commercial jazz though. Yeah. Commercialized jazz, Christmas tunes are mostly jazz standards in this country, which I was thinking about during the holidays. It's kind of, if you listen to like other English language Christmas songs, like British Christmas songs are very different. They're very traditional, like Greensleeves and King Wenceslas and things like that. And American Christmas standards are basically all jazz and big band.
Yeah, Phil, if you're not familiar with jazz, it's what British had minstrel shows. It's like that.
If you've never heard of it.
Think like, you know, Jeeves and Wooster.
Phil needs like one other English person on the show so that he can outnumber me sometime. It's like I realize I'm the slightly less offensive version of the guy who like meets a black person for the first time and then just talks to them about what being black is like. It's like, can I say it if it's in a rap song? What about then? You know what I mean? Like, I'm that guy, but to British people. What if I'm just singing along? Can I say blimey then?
What about core?
Yeah, core. We all say, I was going to say, like, pretty much the most common phraseology in England is core blimey, governor.
Yeah, that's all anyone says.
Like, yeah. I mean,
oh my god.
You know, when you're going down to the market to spend a few tuppence on a fine goose for Christmas.
Of course. A fine goose, perhaps a crumpet. Yeah, I love American ideas of what Britain is like. Oh man. I don't know why core gets me so goddamn much. It's very unnatural coming out of American mouths.
I kind of love terrible, like cliched British stuff. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? Also, you get to like all British people get to imagine themselves through American eyes as like very what you would call middle class. You know, like very much posh and respectable and reserved, which is not the way, you know, a good portion of people in Britain really are.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you've got either a choice. If you are either a snooty lord, or you're a kind of Dickensian,
Dickensian Cockney,
lovable Cockney, or you're Hugh Grant.
Yeah. Charming, but strangely effeminate and charming. I'm so sorry.
Big pod. Fuck.
Only if you're Michael Caine do you get to cross borders, because Michael Caine's the only strongly Cockney actor I can think of who has consistently played like class roles. You know, like in Zulu, he plays like a gentleman. He's of the two lieutenants in Zulu. Michael Caine is the one who's from high breeding. You know what I mean? Even though he has a Cockney accent.
Yeah, to be honest, he's one of the he probably self-selected for that. He's one of the few to be able to escape the adorable Cockney kid farms. Mostly they just get culled when they reach a certain age, but you know, he proved himself by being able to escape.
Oh.
Sean Connery was he didn't play a lot of low class, but he was not, you know, high class and only really played high class.
Michael Caine also talks in Get Carter about how Newcastle is his hometown, which is strange considering his accent.
Yeah. Newcastle. Well, I do love Get Carter though.
So you've
seen Get Carter, Zane, right? Have you seen Get Carter?
Yeah, I've seen Get Carter.
Okay, good.
It's before whatever.
You know, look, I'm trying to catch up, okay? For fuck's sake. But speaking of which, I'm still like, is it still wrong that I just want to make war boy jokes every time I see Stefan Struve at this point?
He's a hell of a war boy. He's more like he's more like a character from 300, like an executioner from 300 who lost a lot of weight. Okay, here we go. Round one's about to begin. Round one, starting now.
So if people are wondering at home why we have spent 0 time building up this fight going into it, there are good reasons.
We have time now.
Yeah, we have time now to watch Struve not box and Jared Rosholt not box and
not really wrestle that much either.
Not really wrestle that much either. Yeah.
This was like I suppose shortly after Stefan Struve had his anxiety attack during his weight cut for the Mark Hunt fight. And I'm sure getting your jaw exploded by Mark Hunt is not good for anyone with anxiety.
And I believe shortly into this fight somewhere, Rosholt broke his leg. So
well, there you go. Yeah. So Struve comes in here. I really thought, judging by, I'm pretty sure the Big Nog fight happened before this, which Struve is never going to be an amazing fighter. And at this point, he's probably only going to get worse in certain ways because he's been fighting for so long and taking so much punishment.
A lot slower.
Yeah, but there were some good signs in the Big Nog fight from him about him using his footwork interspersed with, using his reach and landing some nice precise shots, using his kicking game a little more. So I expected a lot of those like long punches and movement from him in this fight. And as we are already seeing, he's very, very tentative. He really does not want to be taken down, even though probably the best way to not get taken down by Jared Rosholt is to step in and just hit him with uppercuts, which is something Struve is actually good at. So it's a weird sort of reticent performance. Well, I mean, we expect that from Rosholt, but I expected Struve to show up a little more.
Yeah, the problem with using the Big Nog fight as a marker is, it's the general thing of it's very. I rarely like to it's the whole kind of level of competition thing, because Big Nog was at that point, and I love Big Nog. I wrote like a piece about him like after he retired, but he was in the Struve fight, and for at least one fight before that, a partially ambulatory sentient piece of beef jerky, and
partially, not even wholly ambulatory.
Could kind of show off against him a little bit, but he was not there.
Yeah, it's fair. Although I don't know. I mean, certainly the wrestling of Rosholt is better, and we're seeing that now. Nice takedown. He's getting some damage off on the ground. But as far as striking is concerned, even Big Nog is levels beyond what Jared Rosholt is capable of doing.
Well, I was going to say, partially, I mean, I think partially that's too because Rosholt. Is this after the Oleinik fight?
Yes.
It is? Okay.
Super tentative, Jared Rosholt.
He really, I think he invested a lot in his striking without realizing how big his head is.
He was talking before his fight with Derek Lewis about how much time he was working on his striking. His whole focus at Team Takedown was to round out his game by learning to strike. And he's not terrible. He has some hands. He can throw combinations. He can defend himself. He's a heavyweight and with a gigantic bobblehead.
Yeah, he's got a huge head.
Yeah, and Oleinik, knocked his block off, and then he never recovered the confidence to throw hands with people.
Yeah, but so I remember going into this fight, and I believe you picked Struve in this. If I'm combing back through my memory, and I remember people being like, Struve's really dangerous on the ground, and Rosholt is super. I don't want to ever watch him fight again, was mostly what I heard. But this is a useful reminder of just how few heavyweights there are that can actually wrestle at all. And that being one of them was always going to be like a major ace in the hole for Rosholt for a majority of his fights.
And thank God Curtis Blades has not experienced the same loss of confidence that Jared Rosholt did, because Curtis Blades has taken some hard shots and been hurt and continues to ply his striking. So
Blades also has a power wrestling game that Rosholt never had. Rosholt is much more of the let me get in on your hips and then I'll drag and change angles. And
he's got a decent single, but most of it is like up against the fence, changing angles, sweeping out your base leg. It's a lot. Whereas Blades is like, you're getting blasted off your feet.
Yeah. I can carry a
Also-
300-pound man, so I don't really have to worry about
Right.
setting up this shot.
Also, Rochold got flatlined twice, and like Blades just had his
eye
inflated.
closed up by Ngannou.
Yeah.
He got hurt by Cody East, but it does seem that Blades has the advantage of having a significantly better chin than Jared Rochold.
Despite the bigness of his head. Also a big head, but it's also a lot higher up and harder to reach because he's taller. And
I love describing heavyweights like we're talking about architecture. It's a lot. The elevation is it's about on the 5th story. Curtis Blades' head.
So yeah, that first round is over, and
It's over now. It's okay. The fight is going by.
Jared Rochold won the round, got a takedown.
Looked okay from top position. Actually got some damage in there.
Yeah, kept a mounted crucifix-like position going from half guard and landed a little bit of offense, and that was about it. This is, exactly what we expect. Struve can't throw without getting taken down, and he knows it, and Rochold can't throw without getting knocked out, and he knows it. And
Is this before Struve Overeem?
I don't know.
Yeah, because I'm not sure. Because this is one of the things about this fight, right? Is that Struve is not a tough fighter. Like,
it's after Struve Overeem.
yeah. So like, this is the weirdest thing is that so offensively inert on the ground that he can't knock out Struve, like, or even like hurt him. And like the thing is that like Overeem knocked out Struve from guard almost immediately. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm saying, so it's Alistair Overeem. He's a ridiculous power monster, but like from guard immediatly.
Yeah.
Not even a stacked guard, was it? I think he was on his knees in guard.
Yeah. Struve is. I remember going, when the Antonio Bigfoot Silva Stefan Struve fight happened, and people were like, they were betting on Bigfoot for that for some reason. I was like, okay, look, I realize Struve has never had a good chin. He's not the toughest fighter out there. He's usually like a 3 to 5 shots and he gets knocked out fighter. Bigfoot is any one shot any stiff breeze will knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, in that history, Struve is still always been pretty easy to knock out. He's the classic tall man where his head is just so far up, his chin is just so far up on a pedestal that if you swing upwards, you are almost certainly going to connect.
People never talk about the disadvantages of being that tall, but there are real disadvantages, as it makes it much more difficult to defend, to get your head out of the way, but also just to see things coming from that vantage is kind of difficult. To see things that come from underneath and around the side when someone's barreling with their head down right in front of you, and all you can see is the top of their head and shoulders. Nice takedown there from Rochold. Struve, the thing is, Struve, the reason I picked him is that he does not have bad takedown defense. We saw that before against the fence. He stuffed a takedown and stuffed the second shot and then escaped pretty well. But Rochold seems to have picked up on the fact that in the middle of the cage, Struve's height makes it really difficult for him to stuff a genuine shot.
Yeah.
Nice sweep there from Struve.
Yeah. There's some of Struve's actual good guard work, but all for naught. Rochold just pulls him right back down again, and
I wish Rochold had turned into a better fighter, man, because he really has potential physically and skill wise. It's just think mentally he's not really cut out for this.
He just loves snuggling too much.
But he's a good wrestler, man. Like Rochold has really nice control. His shots are not that bad. He's like Daniel Cormier, who also was not really known for his explosive shots. The guys who are really high level wrestlers often find like they're not high level double leg artists and whatnot against other elite wrestlers, but they come into MMA and suddenly, like, Daniel Cormier is a really effective takedown artist when that was never really his wrestling game. And Rochold is landing some really nice, he's finishing some really slick takedowns in the middle of the octagon here.
And eating some up kicks. But
of course.
Yeah, he's got a great base.
Ooh,
He's got
nice shot.
great. He's a one of the best wrestlers at heavyweight, and he was. Uh, he still is as long as he fights. But
Yeah, as far as pedigree in particular, like he's got that Johnny Hendricks type pedigree where
just technically, just as a technical wrestler, heavyweight is not filled with great wrestlers. You know, Josh Barnett is not a great wrestler when it comes to like takedown and control.
and yet he's one of the best wrestlers in heavyweight MMA history. It just kind of
Yeah.
goes to show what the level of wrestling is like. And wrestling is just different too for big guys. Yeah. Like
it's a lot harder to bend at the hips and get in on a takedown when your upper body is that meaty.
Which is why I've always wondered why we don't see more people grappling like Fedor, who was always, you know, expounded the virtues of clinch grappling when the risk of ending up underneath a big dude when you fail a shot is so much higher. Yeah. It makes sense to upper body grapple and look for trips and sweeps. Ooh, vicious elbows from Struve.
Yeah. He's working, you know, he's not when he's safe to know that he's not going to get knocked out, he's working, but he's also, you know, other than those elbows, pretty much lost that round.
Yeah, I mean, I guess watching this fight, I have a real appreciation for why Struve is not throwing more strikes in the feet. It's very much what happened to Stephen Thompson against Tyron Woodley. Like, we expected him to throw more volume, but you look at what happened the first time he was taken down, and you can understand why he was a little more cautious about throwing with reckless abandon. Struve has now been taken down twice, and both times it led to a long period of control and some significant damage from Rochold. So it's tough,
it
man.
Won't be I don't know if it'll be a positive thing to say, but like if this will go down well with people, but this is also a fairly, like, in terms of like damage, it's a fairly uncharacteristic, nice up kick. It's fairly uncharacteristically tentative fight from Rochold as well. Like, because normally he actually would, if he took people down a lot, he would eventually just start to beat their ass, you know, in a kind of John Fitch kind of way. He'd start off with control, and he'd slowly, you know, ramp it up over time, and you can see him doing that a little bit here. But mostly, I think partially, I think he's scared of getting finished in some way. A lot of it, I think, himself, like in these positions where he's kind of surrounded by limbs, and he's like, oh, if I try and move here, things might go wrong. So he feels like he can't move anywhere once he's got position.
Well,
including,
like I said,
you know, posturing up to land strikes.
In this fight, I think he broke his leg. Like, you know, like a crack or something, where he's still moving around, but it just hurt a lot, and he knew that it was bad.
If Struve is doing the right thing as far as actually putting on the pressure here.
Yeah.
If his tactics were a little smarter, you know, like throw to the chest, you know what I mean? Just hit Jared Rochold in the chest with your right hand, and you'll probably knock him out. Just don't go winging over his head with these long straight punches that give him your hips.
Yeah.
It's always been a bit of a confusion to me as to why, like, Struve doesn't kick as much either. I mean, I know in this fight he might be, he might get taken down, but I don't feel like there's any real like feinting with, you know, if he could just see, like, if he landed leg kicks on Rochold, if he just spent the first round like,
you can see Rochold's movement, his legs screwed up here.
Struve did land 2 really hard low kicks. He landed one at the start of this round, and perhaps that's the one that did it.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, Rochold was planted trying to throw a left hook, and his leg just buckled. I think it's a tactic that Struve should have gone to more.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Mark Hunt fight. Like, it is literally physically impossible for Mark Hunt to be able to attack when he is in Struve's kick range. It is, you know, he just can't. He's not big enough. Yeah, Struve decides, like, I'm just going to box with this guy.
One of the reasons I think he doesn't kick, at least from what I've seen from his fights, is that his hip speed isn't fast. He can't get his hips over very fast. And I don't know that how, probably being as tall as he is, his balance is probably not exceptional. And so it really off balances him a lot when he kicks.
He just smacked Rochold in the cheek with a head kick there.
Yeah, he did. So even though it's really powerful and it's a really good tool for him, it's just not something he's ever going to be comfortable doing a lot because it's so just the act of it is uncomfortable.
He's doing well in part because Rochold has stopped doing anything.
Yeah, because Rochold's hurt, and we basically just have so now Struve can actually unload and be more of the fighter that you thought he was going to be all fight.
Yeah.
Problem too is that Struve just doesn't have a lot of discipline, which means that he can be taken out of his game plan, but also when he thinks he's got one opening, he also tends to pour it on a little too eagerly. And if he would just not worry about hitting Rochold hard and just keep touching him with these long punches, Struve has a lot of natural power.
Yeah.
So, but here, he's going nuts after Rochold, and I guarantee there's going to be a takedown the next time he does that. At the very least, it ends up.
If you're 7 feet tall, you don't really have to hit someone that hard.
No, just the amount of distance your shots cover. I mean, they're going to have pop on them when they get there. So Rochold lost this round, but he saved himself from losing it badly.
Yeah, and he's won the first 2, which is enough to win him the fight.
I love that.
Just pushed him.
I love that. A little dismissive shove as Struve gets up.
Oh.
That's wrestling instincts, man. Wrestlers are the only ones who do that kind of stuff, who just see somebody off balance and just push them over.
Definitely, there's a much bigger place for shoving in MMA than has been taken up so far.
Striking, too. George Foreman style, man. Push people off balance, hit them as they stumble. Absolutely.
Makes me sad to see Kyoji Horiguchi's off to Ryzen now.
The best short flyweight.
Yeah. And that's
all right. Well, Struve won the 3rd round.
Yep. Rochold
probably could have won another round if he'd approached it that way.
Yep. The 2nd round, Rochold did not get a whole lot done, but a lot of it too is in the 3rd. Rochold really could not move well at all. True. That takedown he got halfway through, it was all desperation.
Oof. And credit to Rochold.
Pride rules.
Credit to Rochold for putting that reluctance in Struve's heart by scoring those nice early takedowns, because that's why it took. I mean, even in a round where Rochold was clearly not the same as he was, it took a while for Struve to get his punches going.
One of the things too, I don't know about this. This is just an outside thing, but I wonder too, with talking about how why we don't see more heavyweights wrestle with upper body trips and throws and things like that. I really do wonder how much camps tailor the style of games to the body types of their athletes and to the actual style of fight that that division tends towards.
Well, it's a tough one. I mean, you don't want to base everything your fighter does around their physicality, because some guys are not going to feel good doing it. I mean, personality has a lot more to do with style than build, but also there are considerations that have to be made. You shouldn't go into the flyweight division expecting to win fights with top control. In most cases, you're not going to want to go into heavyweight fights expecting to rely on shot takedowns and single legs to get people off their feet.
Yeah, it reminds me, because I was talking to. Let's start the next thing, and I'll say it after that. So we're gonna start Anderson Silva versus Thales Leites now. We've had our cooler, our which did a wonderful job cooling the mood. I got to say that was a fight where really not much happened at all. But anyway, we're gonna jump into Anderson Silva Thales Leites now, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
Not my tempo.
I know. I worked hard to throw you off on that one.
Not my tempo, Zane.
But I remember talking to Julie Kedzie not long ago about how we were talking about women's MMA, and she was talking about how much she hates to see women going for head and arm throws, which if you've heard her commentary, she's pretty good about being like, oh, that's really not a good technique. They shouldn't go for it. And one of the things I've kind of come to realize, I mentioned to her about like with women's MMA is kind of like heavyweight. It's difficult for a lot of women to get in on a power shot, like a power wrestling takedown.
There's probably something to do with the way women's hips are put together that makes it more difficult for them to wrestle the way we want them to.
Well, and yeah, just different like core strength.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that. And also because women are as flexible as they are, many of them are being more flexible than men. Those head and arm throws work at a much higher rate of success than they do in men's MMA. Like,
yeah, but perhaps we would see, if there were more of a focus in many gyms on good upper body wrestling, we would see safer ways of getting people down with similar methods. I mean, obviously Ronda Rousey's judo was extremely effective, even though she hit a lot of things that weren't head and arm throws.
Yeah, but the idea, it's maybe not even that bad a technique for that division. What is commonly thought of is like, oh, there's another bad head and arm throw, and then you watch and she kind of like the woman who hits the throw just fights through it and ends up on top anyway. And it's like, well, maybe this is not. Maybe we're missing the actual like how does the technical game line up with the physical game that these people play? Fedor
had no issues ever ending up in scarf hold. Yeah. He didn't consider that a weak position. He controlled it very well. In judo and in some wrestling schools, of course it's seen as a good position. You just have to have the right weight and pressure and control to make sure that you don't get your back taken.
Yeah. So
to me, I think it's mostly an artifact of the women's division still being relatively outdated. And I think it's probably that it's a bit more it's noticeable because we see it more in strawweight is obviously evolving a ton faster than bantamweight is. And that I think we see it getting kind of cleansed out of strawweight a lot quicker. The whole Paige Van Zandt type, that's my primary takedown type thing is increasingly just not a thing you see anymore.
Meanwhile, for a fighter whose build probably does not make her well suited for shot takedowns, Rose Namajunas has some very good upper body wrestling that does not rely on head arm throw.
Yeah, I mean it maybe it's something of an artifact, but I think it's also been over.
I think it's a bit of both.
It's been overemphasized as a really terrible technique for considering what the actual realities of the division are.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Where we're not there's a reason that I think women tend to go for so many throws and upper body wrestling tactics instead of shots, but also that there's also a different reason which explains why the head and arm throw is they're chosen, because it's like the head and arm throw is kind of a wrestling technique which, like the scarf hold, it's like a schoolyard headlock. It comes out of, it's a very natural thing to do and something that makes sense to do if the other person doesn't know how to react to it, but does have some serious flaws compared to a throw which is based on a strong underhook. When you get to a higher level of technique, which I think is, as Phil said, why we don't see a lot of them at strawweight, because they just don't work that well. I mean, people are going to take your back. People are going to, Joanna Jędrzejczyk constantly just slips her head out of the head and arm throw attempt, takes her opponent's back and starts elbowing them in the face, without ever going to the ground. Yeah. So it just doesn't work at strawweight the way it does at bantamweight.
It's true. Oh, I remember Silver Star. I actually still have a Wanderlei Silva Silver Star shirt.
Wait, is that an attractive shirt? Very, very classy. I love the
super classy
$50 tattoo look that it has.
Yeah,
I mean, it's such a good bad thing of sponsorship. You have to look at these god awful ugly shirts.
But I mean, Yeah, this was the peak of like
Yeah.
bad MMA regalia.
Mhm.
Like
That-
this was the absolute like it was
That
this because
shirt-
this was around Affliction, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
That specific shirt is the peak of MMA regalia. I mean, that is a masterpiece.
This is like 2009, 2010. So yeah.
Oh my
I mean,
god.
depending on whether like you think the peak is like should be hilariously bad or frighteningly bad, you know, I mean, there's all the kind of metal militia stuff. There's
Yeah.
like the
Oh. But at
Or,
the
I
same
mean-
time, it also represents like it also represents sort of like a happier moment in like the structure of the sport and how the sport functioned.
I look
Oh,
at
yeah.
shirts like that and I have an unwilling nostalgia, like when I hear Face the Pain, and I complained about it and railed against it for so many years, but when they brought it back after a brief visit into Hans Zimmer land, they brought Face the Pain back, and I was like, I kind of missed it. Like, I just realized I kind of missed it.
Okay, you may be actually deranged. That
I think a lot of people feel this way, even if they don't recognize it. That you hear it and you're like, it's fight night. It has a nostalgic impact that
Yeah,
has nothing to do with the quality of the music itself.
Yep, I have a Pavlovian response to Face the Pain.
Right. Yeah. I start, you know, like wrapping my hands and preparing to throw hilarious punches behind the commentators in the crowd. Some of these numbers, you know, where it's like I've clearly never thrown a punch in my life.
watch out, Rhonda.
Oh, ooh! I thought we slammed women's bantamweight hard enough, but that's my favorite guy ever. Is the guy in the GIF with it's the two dudes throwing punches, and the one guy is so eager to throw these fucking ropey punches at the camera. Where it's that's my favorite guy. I like him more than the Just Bleed guy.
Well, that's okay. The Just Bleed guy is kind of a weird dude.
Oh yeah, what's going on with him? Has people like caught up with him after his brief moment of fame, right?
I'll have to tell you later.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have teased that out there, but
Zane wants to slander somebody.
it's a long form that Tim Bissell is working on. So
We'll look forward to that.
yeah, it'll be coming out hopefully. You know, we're waiting on like one last thing before we can publish it. It's something for people to look for.
You know, it's weird. I think of Thales Leites as two separate people because there's a lot of fighters who like left the UFC and came back. I just don't have any association between old Thales Leites and new one. Like for whatever reason, I just feel like there's the dude who like had that awful fight with Marquardt and then the awful fight with Silva and a couple of good wins, and then like there's the guy, and then there's the BJJ guy with suspect gas tank that we have today. Like
partially he came back so much beefier. And he also came back like throwing hands. So look how
thin his neck is. Here, like look how scrawny his neck looks compared to modern Thales Leites.
Yeah. So you really have like a dude who not only did he leave and come back, but he came back looking and fighting different.
Yeah. So like, yeah, whenever I see him, I'm just like, I just think of them as like two guys, like unconsciously. I'm like Thales Leites, and then there's Thales Leites. It's like just one of those Brazilian names.
Anderson Silva at this point, we noted that I believe Anderson Silva had yet to have a really shit awful fight.
This is his first one. It's worth noting because again, I'm going to try to explore the theory that Anderson at this point is past his prime and is adapting his style to make up for the fact that his gas tank and it did
come right after the Patrick Cote fight, which
was kind of a stinker, yeah.
Which was kind of a stinker until Cote got injured.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost a disappointing end to a lackluster fight. So, Anderson here is 34 years old, and he's already been fighting for more than a decade.
He's already 12 years into his career at this point.
So, yeah, I maintain my Patrick Wyman of Heavy Hands is on board with this theory, and we've talked about it a few times. But I think the masterful defensive counterpunching Anderson Silva that we now know is the post-prime Anderson Silva, and he's basically been in that form, slowly deteriorating ever since. But that a lot of the things that we associate with classic Anderson Silva fights are actually adaptations to his body not doing what it used to do when he was a young dude who would just willingly take shots on the chin and just go after people with reckless abandon. Like the Dan Hendo fight compared to this. I mean, Anderson just taking shots and walking Dan down and trading on the feet and just fighting at a really high pace. We don't see that anymore, really, after the Cote fight. We only see very brief bursts, very similar to what he did against Derek Brunson, like things that are meant to catch the eye and scare the opponent more than they are intended to really get after them and finish them.
Hey, there's GSP for an early Anderson Silva. Will he fight GSP call out?
Yep. Round 1 begins now.
Yeah, in terms of the whole Silva being depleted thing, I think it is at least partially him. It's just the fact that, as a fighter goes deeper into a championship, they always become, it's just about risk mitigation, basically.
Yeah,
I mean, you are constantly
the Aldo process.
Yeah, you are constantly defending. You are you constantly have to. It's just a totally different kind of psychological mindset. What was the other thing I was going to say? The other thing is obviously that is that the best version of a fighter, I think, in general, I think the best version of a fighter is always just slightly after their physical prime. I don't think I think there's a kind of interdiction point where you keep learning and your physicality goes down.
Yeah,
the two arcs. Yeah,
for really great fighters,
keep kind of
sorry,
following the same route. So your physicality starts to plane out while whilst your kind of knowledge of the game increases. And I think there's a point where your physicality starts to go down, but the net function of the two is that you are actually functionally a better fighter. So I'd say my classic example would be Lyoto Machida around the Weidman fight. Clearly a diminished fighter, I think, in terms of his athleticism. I think he is not at his fastest or his strongest around those fights, but he is the best Lyoto Machida.
Yeah, he's now smart enough and has enough depth of skill to make up for that. But I think that only really happens with great fighters who are really, really at the top of the game already, because those are the ones who tend to make the right adaptations. Those are the ones who seem to know how to adjust when their body isn't feeling the way it used to.
I love Anderson's mongoose shit. Where he's just oh, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you, and people you can see people just getting visibly wigged out by it, and then often he just doesn't do anything.
King of bullshit, Anderson Silva. Seriously, the king of mental manipulation, of well-chosen body language.
Mm-hmm.
Thales Leites has not really been hit with anything yet, and he looks terrified. He looks like he wants nothing to do with Anderson striking already.
You can see his hands are shaking more than his arms are moving.
Yes. Very jumpy.
Is not a good sign. Yeah. Anderson, I mean, it's funny, guys. Reminded me, too, of watching that video that's going around recently of the dude dancing who then gets head kicked into unconsciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just it's such a lack of understanding as to what made a fighter like Anderson Silva or Roy Jones Jr. functional.
Yeah.
It's you can't actually just stop fighting and dance.
Not unless you're Nassim Hamed.
Yeah, you have to actually these things that they're doing actually have a purpose. There's a reason that they're being done. And
I loved the way that just fighters across the board imitated Anderson Silva in different ways throughout his career as champion without ever really seeming to understand why those things work. Around this time of Anderson's career, we saw a lot of shuffling hands from people where they were moving their hands and they had no idea what they were doing, but that's what Anderson did, and it looked cool. The front kick spree, of course, after Anderson knocked out Vitor.
Yep.
He's pulling some nice angles on these punches, actually. He's getting a few sneaky shots in around the sides. Ooh, vicious leg kick.
Yeah. No, and that's the sad thing about this fight that makes it such a disappointment is it's so obvious that Anderson Silva really could do whatever he wanted with Thales Leites if he wanted to. Like, he just went in and took him down. And
yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that. I think this is why I think that is, ooh, my gosh. That's partially the case. I mean, clearly this is not a very diminished Anderson we're looking at here, just judging by his scrambling and his speed.
The way he stuffed that takedown.
Yeah, but I think that as we get further into this fight, and this was much more pronounced in the Damian Maia fight when the heat did not help him. As we get more into this fight, we're going to see more of Anderson getting tired and masking it by doing a lot more bullshitting than he is attacking.
Yeah. Well, and then, I mean, the theory may still hold. It's just that, like, because it's on the edge of what people still know of as his prime, you see the movement and you see the openings that are there, and you're just wondering, like, why isn't he taking that opening?
Yeah.
And it could still be because, you know, he doesn't feel like he knows he shouldn't, you know, he knows that that's not the way for him to fight. But
I think even though those like 2 shots that we saw then were pretty ridiculous, the only, I think the Maia fight, and maybe I'm misremembering this, is even more. Is actually even more like transparent that he could do whatever he wanted from the beginning. There's a point early in that fight where maybe in one of the first 2 rounds where they're just standing there at a distance, and Silva just flying knees him, just from nowhere. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna, you know, not as a counter to a takedown or anything. I just figure your head's gonna be at that point there, and I'm just gonna put my knee there. Like,
yeah.
And then he just goes back to doing nothing and dancing and playing the guitar.
Yeah, I think it's the guitar playing. I think it's a combination of the two, where that right there too is some of that defensive mindset that all reigning champions do have to adopt, but also certainly in the later rounds of the Maia fight. I mean, it took Maia way too long to realize, but we can all acknowledge that Anderson was tired and not really willing to trade punches in the 4th and 5th rounds of that bout. And I'm pretty sure this one gets into that territory as well.
Well, I don't think part of the problem with this fight is I don't think Anderson ever really has to trade punches. Like, there's just nothing to trade.
Nice shot from Leites.
Yeah. Nice takedown from Leites, which, I mean, you know, it's amazing that to think of how good Anderson Silva is, that this fight keeps going after a takedown like that from Thales Leites, because Leites at this point as a top control grappler was just really fantastic.
Here we get to see the first signs of meditative guard Anderson Silva, where he literally closes his eyes and holds on and just breathes.
The Derek Brunson guard, or the Derek Lewis guard, rather.
Yeah, that's why I'm constantly calling Derek Lewis an artless latter-day Anderson Silva. That's the phrase I've chosen, but it makes absolute sense for Anderson as a gambit. And it definitely got into trouble against really good wrestlers. And it must be said that of all the reigning champions, Anderson probably faced the worst wrestlers.
Yeah.
Which is why Chael Sonnen was so surprisingly effective against him, because he's a genuinely good takedown artist. But, I mean, it makes sense for Anderson because many of his fights, he needs just that one opportunity. And in fights like this, where that one opportunity does not materialize, the threat of that one opportunity is enough to keep his opponent from winning or getting anything done at range. Leites getting off a couple nice hammer fists here. Ooh, elbows from Anderson.
It's really amazing, though, to watch how busy Anderson keeps his arms from guard to stop Thales Leites from actually being able to land any ground and pound.
Yeah, it's a very good old school defensive guard.
Because it's not even like he's not locking Leites down and just like holding him. He's actually like sliding his arms around back and forth to keep Leites from being able to leverage anything, and then landing his own shots in between.
It's Nogueira-esque, the way Nogueira would like move his head and constantly deflect and then overhook arms from his back. And it was just surprisingly difficult for anybody who wasn't named Emelianenko to beat him up. That was a really nice little post on the hip to get a technical stand-up.
That stand-up was beautiful. Like, he grabbed his ankle and then posted on his hip and used that as leverage to stand up.
And then just swaggers away.
See, it is a disappointing fight, but it is like, it's hard to be too disappointed watching Anderson Silva even anywhere near his prime doing stuff.
Yeah, it's like why I had really enjoyed rewatching to write an article on the Brunson fight.
Yeah,
like you have to. When you've watched enough Anderson Silva, you got to appreciate how well he does nothing. You know what I mean? Like he does nothing better than pretty much anyone else.
Yep. I think I think in our preview I think I called him the John Cage of empty space.
And you can see too, like the way that he against fighters like Leites in particular, the way he keeps a certain distance where they feel like they're threatened, but he knows that they're far enough away that they can't just shoot him and surprise him and get him off his feet or surprise him. And unfortunately, at this point in the Brunson fight, we saw the same kind of distance control and everything, and it still wasn't enough for Anderson to keep from being hit. But even if your reaction times are slowing down, when you've got a 4-foot gulf between you and the guy who desperately does not want to be punched by you, it's really hard for him to get anything going.
Weird little lunging jab in there and a hook behind it. That everything's just, it's so weird because it's always been one of the other marvels of Anderson Silva's career is that, like, even when he's way off balance and just sort of throwing something, he's so accurate that everything hurts so obviously much.
He was Roy Jones-esque in a lot of ways, where the technique would actually be pretty ugly behind a lot of his boxing, but he made it work. Like the left hands he threw against Yushin Okami were pretty amateur. They're like winging wild overhands. It's like, Anderson, throw a straight punch, but he made it work.
And partially too, it's just that he gets people so afraid that they don't know what to expect, and so they don't see anything coming.
Yeah, he has an aura. That's part of it's part of his mind control. You know, he has this aura, and then everything he does in a fight is about playing into that aura, like just making you feel jumpy and afraid all the time.
Think about how fucking awestruck Daniel Cormier was to face Anderson Silva on like 2 days' notice at light heavyweight.
Right.
And he was still like, I don't want to, I don't want to trade with him. I don't want to put myself in any trouble. Like, that is a serious aura.
The thing is that Anderson has the incredibly useful trait of refusing to play any game but his own. He will absolutely refuse. He is not interested in the least in playing any other game other than Anderson Silva's game. And the thing is that Anderson Silva's game is almost totally unique because it's just because the soul of it is just weird rhythm. That's just he's not interested in necessarily in like a kickboxing match he's not interested in kickboxing or grappling or even like strikes and knockouts. It's not really what he's about. He's just about playing with like what's going on, with the rhythm of kind of, this is when things are hard, this is when things are soft, this is when nothing is happening, this is when I'm going to really look like things are happening. It's all just nothing is, and he doesn't care about any of the other elements of it. He's just like, all I want to do is mess with rhythm. I don't really care about much else.
But the thing is, he does it so well and so apparently confidently that, like, how can you watch Anderson Silva playing patty cake with Thales Leites at his feet and then walking away and come away from it with any impression other than Anderson Silva's dominating this dude, even though he does nothing, he doesn't get anything done. It's just like you can tell the difference between his body language and Leites' body language, that Anderson is winning and Leites feels like Anderson is winning.
So in the talk of all that, which is all lovely and true and philosophical, we missed a couple of amazing things.
Yeah.
The second of which was Thales Leites landing a pretty good overhand and Anderson Silva waving him on and then clipping him with a little dirty boxing uppercut that just seemed to turn Thales Leites' world inside out and hurt his eye really badly.
That's why Forrest Griffin talked about stuff like that. Is why Forrest Griffin always says it felt like wrestling with his dad. Like he just felt like an idiot every time. Even when he hit Anderson, he just felt stupid because Anderson just hit him back way better right away, or make him feel like he hadn't done anything.
And then the other thing we missed was Thales Leites getting a kick caught, and then Anderson Silva like throwing a punch, and then effortlessly turning that into a takedown, and then just standing right back out like the fight had never stopped for even a half second. Like there was no bridge in between him catching the kick, throwing the punch, turning that into a single leg, and then standing back up at all. And it's the kind of stuff that it's just... There's still very few fighters who fight like that. You know?
Yeah, almost none. Like, yeah, because there's just going to be periods where everything flows into everything else. And then there's going to be periods of just a single staccato note and then nothing. And then, you know, it's a whole, like, it's just a rhythmic game that just doesn't really exist anywhere else in the sport.
Anderson is also the only guy I can think of in MMA who effectively portrays like condescending disappointment when his opponent hits him or falls over. He just looks like he wants a better fight. So like Thales Leites just feels like a moron, I'm sure, for falling down. Anderson's like, he like sighs and walks away and makes a big show of it.
You know who the other person who does that is? Pretty not as well, but pretty well is Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She's got a lot of that in her game.
The gesture she made in the third or fourth round against Claudia Gadelha, she found out she just walks away and like, get the fuck back up. I'm not playing this game. I thought we were gonna fight.
Yeah.
It breaks you, man. It breaks you, and it sends a strong message to everyone watching.
Oh, that knee kick he just threw.
This is actually a pretty high pace, like aggressive Anderson Silva round.
Yeah, I'm actually quite enjoying this fight.
I am too. Yeah. I expected this to be a lot worse. This is really just like me getting to love Anderson Silva a bunch because he's got a blank canvas to paint on without getting a knockout real quick.
Can we talk about how great it was when he did just he just had a couple of sequences of just pure patty cake there. Right? He was just like touch. Like,
he's so confident just touching your hand. You're like, what do I do?
And he just like slapped at Thales Leites' hands twice and then threw a low kick off like two slaps, low thigh kick.
Look at this body language. It's amazing, right? It's like Leites looks like a moron for just trying to be creative and trying to get something going. Nobody else does that as well as Anderson.
It was the visible sigh as Anderson kind of turns away and slumps his shoulder to one side. Like
it is like fighting your
tries to pull
dad.
guard.
It's like fighting your dad, and your dad just keeps telling you how he expected you to be strong enough by now to compete. You know what I mean? He's like, come on, son. I didn't realize you were such
about how nice a takedown Thales Leites hit early in that fight. And then he went for that one. Anderson Silva just put a hand on his neck and stood back and just like pushed him over to the canvas. Oh,
this is good, man. This is not a bad fight. This is actually really entertaining.
Yeah, this is. I feel like we've let the viewing public down.
We had our only really depressing fight came right in the middle with that terrible Rochold-Struve fight, which we just kind of blanked out for most of. And now it's just getting to watch Anderson Silva be creative, which it's
just be a puppet master. You know, it's. I think it's okay to have this on our show because it's clearly remembered as one of the worst title fights ever. And
people talk about it all the time.
Yeah, but if you look at it through the right eyes, I think you can really appreciate what's going on. Mike Brown.
I
think partially. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think this was also at the this was at the MMA turning mainstream juncture where like finishes started and people just got better and finishes started to become a lot more commonplace. And from Anderson Silva, people wanted him to instantaneously melt the other guy with like a flying tornado double knee, or they just were not interested. Like,
it's also a fight that I think is reflected on much, much worse through the lens of the Damian Maia fight, which was just an uglier fight. And so people remember that, and then they remember the Thales Leites fight, and they're like, oh, that was an ugly, terrible fight too. Whereas this is pretty. It's not action. Thales Leites has nothing, can get nothing going, and Anderson Silva isn't knocking him out, but it's a pretty fight.
This is more of a genuine surface level domination.
Yep.
Playing off of the fact that Anderson is just making Damian Maia feel, or making Thales Leites feel and look like he can't do anything. Whereas the Damian Maia fight, it was like all bullshit with Anderson after the first round getting very little actually done. We're getting some guitar. We're getting some guitar, Anderson.
And that's the kind of dancing too, where people are like, "Oh, well, that's terrible and whatever. I don't want to see that." But it all has a purpose. Like he's never
clearly doing
his eyes off Leites for a second.
He's clearly doing his Lyoto Machida impression. Like there's a whole set of outtakes from his DVD where he impersonates other fighters, and that is his Lyoto Machida impression. He's clearly just playing.
Just a super exaggerated like parody one though. Like instead of like Lyoto's like subtle like little hip feint and shimmy, he's
it's like a cartoon
spasming his shoulders back and forth.
Super long stance, both feet in line. Go on.
This is really surprisingly like workmanlike for Anderson Silva. Like,
yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Like I'm really enjoying it.
Control.
He's getting a lot done off of the control and the manipulation. I think we're maybe reaching the stage in the fight where stuff like that kind of stops happening, where it's more play and less action. Yeah,
but he keeps landing those knee kicks, which also became something everybody imitated off of him.
Yeah.
And the way he's doing it, like, that's way meaner than almost anything I've even seen John Jones do. Like, John Jones gets hate for it, but Anderson like is jumping into those and really stomping through them. And because I think fighters hadn't seen them before at all, Leites is like stepping straight into them too. He just mugged him with his pre-fight stance while Leites was laboriously the back leg kick. I love it. That stuff is so beautiful. It's so effortless. Like, it just looks like it took him no work at all to think. He didn't think about it at all. It just was like, oh, well, that's the kick that you land in that situation, obviously. And those are the kinds of taunting tactics that are genuinely risky. Like, if Anderson had taken a shot while crossing his feet to land that kick, he would have gotten hurt. But the way he chooses his spots is really, really artful. The way he did it in a point where Leites was not prepared to throw any offense at all. Right. He knows when Leites' feet are out of position, when he's retreating, and when he's not feeling confident enough to counter. So that's the perfect time to make him feel even stupider by doing some silly shit like that.
He just did the standing hammer fist? Yeah.
There's a chop the top of Thales Leites' head. Yeah, this is more like highlight Anderson for me. Here we go. Machida. Here it is. I like how if you're a Lyoto, you'd almost be insulted by this. By your training partner imitating you by sticking his chin really high in the air and then just like popping his hips forward in this ridiculous, exaggerated fashion.
High five? No.
Anderson's a weird kicker, isn't he? His low kicks have always been weird and shrimpy. He kind of folds up on himself whenever he throws that low kick. Yeah, I think in part he's preparing to get them caught, I think. Like, he withdraws them and tucks his leg down at the same time so that if he's caught, he's already in a balanced position for being caught. I think is what because I can remember times he's had his kick caught and he immediately like folds back and tries to pull back. Yeah. kicks.
So here's the question: at what point does Anderson get bored of beating Leites up? Because I suspect that
He's probably pretty
he
bored
does.
right now.
I think he's reached that point. I think we saw the last 2 minutes of that round. He's genuinely disappointed.
I mean, look at him. This is the face of somebody who looks like they're losing a fight. He's just like, he looks discouraged and unhappy.
But like, this is the kind of point. Like, if this was Jose Aldo, the other, I'm going to defend my belt no matter what. Kind of, Jose Aldo would probably just give up a takedown and sit on his back in guard for the rest of the round.
Do it literally as little as possible to not lose the fight.
You'd just be like, well, you can't finish me from here.
Yeah, Anderson Silva he gets more to the point like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to humiliate you more and without doing anything if you're not going to fight me.
He comes out mixing it up, trying to be a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
He and Aldo both do this thing where they get really, really fidgety and tense sometimes, where they're just like a bundle of crazy energy rather than the smooth grace we usually see from them. Anderson right now is just like, he looks desperate to land a punch almost. Very, very eager.
Yeah, I think maybe part of that too is that he's trying to show excitement to get Leites into a firefight.
Like, match me. Do what I'm doing.
He wants him to be frenetic and start throwing.
And we were talking about the rhythmic control thing, and if there was someone, there isn't in terms of the disdain.
That was he just slapped Leites to the ground, basically. Just he landed that weird looping right hand and then just grabbed his head and pulled it down to the mat.
We get to see some Anderson Silva ground and pound. My favorite part of his game.
He is,
always the best.
You were saying, Phil, who else has this disdain?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of disdain, there aren't many. In terms of the kind of rhythmic control, I think the best example is probably Yoel Romero.
Sure, yeah. He wouldn't even let Yves Levine back him up there.
Ooh.
He challenged Leites to get back to his feet.
Yeah, this is now Anderson Silva's kind of fighting mad.
No, there are times sometimes Anderson Silva you get the impression he wants to play.
Did you see that?
No.
He was keeping ground control there in Leites' guard by grabbing him by the cup.
Classic
Amazing.
Anderson. What were you saying, Phil?
There are a few times when sometimes it's about he wants to be smooth and he wants the perfect shot, and sometimes he just wants to just beat you up. There's something really vicious about him, right? And there hasn't been all that much in this fight, when he just turns it on full blast. But I think it's stuff like when he feels fully confident in grounded situations, like he did there. He just feels like, I could take this fight anywhere, and then he'll just open up he'll just open up the kind of vicious floodgates.
Yeah, a thing that Aldo also does.
Yeah,
we're talking about the two defensive maestros who have been long-standing champions. Oh my god, man,
that is so stupid and gorgeous. That just duck under while Leites is going for a takedown, and then just kind of push him,
shuck him off.
It's just nothing.
Anderson is in full-on disappointed playful mode, where it's like he everything he does is challenging Leites to get something going, knowing that Leites won't be able to. What was that little head snap?
Man, I enjoy this fight way too much.
It's good, man. It's a good fight.
It is.
It's a good performance.
It's a good performance.
Yeah, Leites, it's completely one-sided, and not in the way we usually want one-sided fights to be. But you have to appreciate the artistry of Anderson Silva.
It's exactly. You know what this is? This is exactly the fight that Gavin Tucker was trying for in his bout against Sam Sicilia.
Yeah, and likewise, people were disappointed by that. But
it's a beautiful fight.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I also feel like Leites he's never really stopped trying. He's kept going for it. But I feel like this fight sort of maybe permanently broke him in a way, because he came back and he came back strong, but he's never been someone who's been able to fight back under pressure in any way since this. If you look at the Musashi fight, you can clearly see at some point in that fight, he just decides like enough of this.
The Musashi
I'm just not
fight,
going to try anymore.
The Jotko fight, they both, if you look at it from that perspective, they both seem like,
especially,
they both seem like him having flashbacks to his fight with Anderson.
Well, and I don't even know if it may not even be that. It may be that this is actually just the fight that exposed that that's always the fighter he was, because going into this fight with Anderson Silva, he had pretty much, he had beat a lot of guys really quickly, or just had a lot of really ugly decisions. So I don't know that this may just be the fight that really kind of exposed that narrative really cleanly.
Yeah,
on
maybe.
a very large stage.
I think it's the thing that he seems, even like towards the fourth and fifth, he seemed like he was trying more than he would later. Admittedly, that might just be like the thing of a young guy in his first title fight, as opposed to like an old guy who's learned self-preservation. Difficult to say.
He was trying. He didn't have the options at his disposal. Like everything he only had a few things he knew how to try, and each of them kept not working. And either Anderson would actively make him feel like an idiot for the fact that he kept missing, or Anderson would viciously punish him for missing.
And it's interesting to see too, because a lot of the commentary on this is remembering how many times Leites flopped and like pulled guard and all that. He honestly mostly did not pull guard that much. Like most of it was he would go for a good takedown and get effortlessly brushed aside, and then either his momentum would carry him to the ground, Anderson Silva would push him to the ground, or a few times he'd just be like, well, I need to get this fight to the ground anyway, so I'm going to try.
He chose guard like a jiu-jitsu practitioner should. I mean, he chose guard when he knew he wasn't finishing the takedown and was already falling. But he never, at no point did he get his hands on Anderson and try to pull him into guard.
No, he didn't do what Ryan Hall did against what's his name? Greg
Lobov. Oh, Gray Maynard, sorry.
Against Gray Maynard, where he just pulled guard, and at every moment
he just fell over whenever Gray Maynard came forward.
Yeah.
Perdue style.
Yeah, I mean, he did a few things, like he didn't try and stop himself if he was going down from like weird leg kicks or anything like that. But
sure. There's certainly a glimmer of maybe Anderson will jump into my, but then how at that, I mean, you can see why I'm starting to kind of go with this fight breaks Leites in some unfixable way theory, because he finally does get Anderson into his guard in the last round, and Anderson just pummels him.
Yeah.
Like Anderson finally decides to go there, and then it's very GSP like. First he beats Leites where Leites is weakest, and then he beats him where he's strongest. And like GSP, a lot of Anderson's opponents never really recovered after losing to him, because he beats you on every level.
Well, Leites did go on to have a lot of success after this fight, so it's hard for me to feel quite like it's breaking, but it could have changed his game irrevocably.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for Leites. I mean, because I think he did a great job of coming back. He beat a ton of good people. He came extremely close to beating Michael Bisping in a pretty awesome fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe this fight just taught him that like this is what the best is, and that maybe he'll never be there.
You can see the sort of bruiser style he adopted later as maybe him masking the fact that, as we've now seen, the ability to totally shut down and lose heart when somebody starts to technically outstrike him is still very much there, because we've seen that in the Musashi and the Jotko fights, that if you look at those as flashbacks to his loss to Anderson, it's totally understandable. It's like Rory McDonald beating Jake Ellenberger. You go through a fight and like that, and you just feel like this is a style of fighting that I literally cannot do anything against. And how do you come back from that as a fighter when confidence and ego are so important and so fragile for fighters? How do you really totally come back from that and fix that sort of weakness?
So yeah, now here we are, end of the fight, and I gotta say, Anderson Silva does not deserve hate for this fight.
It's kind of one of my favorite Anderson Silva fights. Like, having just watched it, I think that is the perfect marriage of aggression and damage and just sort of playfulness, and it was pretty beautiful. Like, I don't really have any complaints about it.
Nope.
I mean, he may have gotten hit twice in that fight while still landing a lot of strikes.
Yeah, I mean, there's zero argument that he mired any of the, he did what he did against Meyer in any of those rounds. He won every round by a country mile.
Yeah.
Like, he started a little slow, but he really, it was a great round winning performance. He got aggressive when he needed to. I mean, he didn't knock out Leites, but
He hurt him.
He could have done. He could have done. Like, I don't think even Anderson Silva can't just knock people out when he wants to. It's still a function of like variance and hitting the perfect shot and so on. Sometimes you're just not going to knock the other guy out.
Leites is also a very durable guy who
He's never been knocked out.
Who refused to run into anything that Anderson was showing him, which is typically how Anderson really hurts people. So,
yeah,
I think that was just a pretty consummately brilliant performance. Having just rewatched it, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I'm shocked that failed for us so badly, because it is such a hallmark of bad MMA. But
I suggested the Meyer fight, and look, here we all are, happy and discussing how much we love Anderson Silva.
What a failure.
It comes back to, like, I think I got a little high off my our GSP Jake Shields success, because that was really like such a successful disappointment.
That delivered. I mean, it was you could enjoy it thoroughly while still appreciating how disappointed you were when you first saw it. This one, you just kind of feel like you were wrong for being disappointed.
Yeah. This was just a fun, good performance of Anderson Silva at his best, delivering a completely dominant performance against a very good fighter.
Yeah.
So,
loved it.
On that note, it's hard to close the show with not being depressed, but I feel really good inside. So, give us a thumbs up over on YouTube. If you're watching this over there, subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com. That's DOTCOM. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. You can find Phil on Twitter at EvilGregJackson. You can find all three of us over at Bloody Elbow in our various roles and duties. And we will be back next week for another episode of the MMA Depressed Us. We have not decided yet what fights to cover, but we will figure it out in the interim. Feel free to send us suggestions on Twitter or in the post or on YouTube or wherever you want. And
isn't next week the week preceding UFC 209?
I believe that we have, let's see,
March 4th. Yeah, we've got Woodley Thompson next weekend.
Oh, is it next weekend?
Yep. I know, it caught me off guard too.
Oh shit! Never mind.
So we'll be back at the end of March after Manuel versus Corey Anderson.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, shit. We'll be back after that.
Still send us your suggestions.
We don't get to watch one of the worst fights ever. Instead, we get to watch we have to watch Khabib Ferguson instead.
What is this bullshit? I'm getting carried away. So, okay, we'll be back next week for UFC 209 with the Vivisection, Care Don't Care, If I Did It, Knuckle Up, Heavy Hands, all our other good shows. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next time.